think Mokchok Rinpoche, who was teaching at Tushita Dharamsala, what practice I should do, what I should emphasize. And at that time he said, you should read the biographies of the lineage lamas of the Gelugpa tradition, the Ganden lineage. It started with Tsongkhapa. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
What time is your lunch break? I'll order lunch at home.
Oh, what time is our lunch break? What do you think? 12:30?
Oh,
Quarter
no,
to
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
If I may say so, please.
1 o'clock is our lunch break. So he said you should focus on the gurus of the Ganden tradition. And at that time I didn't take it that seriously due to obscurations in the mind, distracted mind. I didn't take it seriously. Since then it seems to make a lot more sense. Whenever I've studied a few of the texts, whether it's Milarepa's life story or in this case Lama Tsongkhapa or Padampa Sangye, different people, it's so, it can be very, very inspiring to see how they practiced. It can also seem a little scary sometimes, what they did. If I compare it with what I myself do, then I kind of get a little scared that is it really possible to do that? Could I ever practice like that? However, it still plants very beneficial seeds in the mind to study and reflect on these biographies, to see how what we're enjoying now in terms of the teachings is due to the dedication of such practitioners in the past. Their incredible vision, their compassion for us, and their practice. It's just extraordinary to look at. So let's take a little look, because there's so much could be said. Even in this booklet, a short biography, still took them about 40 pages. So here, just a few things can be said. First of all, regarding Lama Tsongkhapa, who was born in 1357 and passed away in 1419. His parents, what about his parents? His parents were very special people, quite special. His father was apparently a very bold but unassuming person who was constantly absorbed in the Dharma, thoughts of the Dharma, and who used to recite the expression of the names of Manjushri every day. That's quite a long text where you recite the names of Manjushri. So he did that every day. His mother was a very kind woman. She was always chanting Avalokiteshvar's mantra, the 6-syllable mantra. And they had six children, 6 sons. Tsongkhapa was the 4th. It's said that in a previous incarnation, Tsongkhapa had offered a conch shell to Shakyamuni Buddha. Sorry, he'd offered a clear crystal rosary, and Buddha Shakyamuni had offered him a conch shell in return, which is very auspicious, of course. And then the Buddha, it said, called his disciple Ananda to him and prophesied that the boy would be born in Tibet and would found a great monastery in a particular area near Lhasa and be instrumental in the flourishing of the Dharma in Tibet. So Buddha himself, according to Mahayana teachings, made this prophecy. And the Buddha even gave this young boy at that time a future name, Sumatikirti, Losang Dakpa in Tibetan. And then all of this occurred just as the Buddha had prophesied. And the conch shell that the Buddha is said to have given Tsongkhapa even survived and was unearthed during the building of Ganden Monastery in about 1408, 1409, that time. And until 1959, still this conch shell could be seen. It was kept in Drepung, the largest monastery in Tibet. And then I guess it was destroyed or disappeared during the Cultural Revolution. So he also predicted, or Guru Padmasambhava also predicted rather, that a fully ordained Buddhist monk, again he gave the name Losang Drakpa, would appear in the east of Tibet, near China, and that this monk would be regarded as being an emanation of the bodhisattva, of a bodhisattva, and would attain the enjoyment body of a Buddha. So all of these prophecies were already there. During the time before his birth, Tsongkhapa's birth, his mother had extraordinary dreams. Yeah, question?
Very good. What would be the difference between an emanation and a reincarnation?
This is a tricky question. One could say that there's a continuum of mind, which is, if someone dies, then they're reborn, they're recognized as the continuum of that mind. Now, when we speak of emanation, we're getting into territory that I find very difficult, because it's said that even a first-level bodhisattva on the path of seeing can emanate 100 bodies, right? And then going up to extraordinary numbers. So what it means is that those beings are in a sense, in essence, they share the qualities and presumably the qualities of the original emanator. But even that is just, speaking in language, in words. It would not be correct probably what I'm saying exactly. So emanation, when you speak of so many emanations, for me it seems what I find difficult about emanation is how one consciousness, for example, can split, in a sense, if one could use that word, into many consciousnesses, thousands of them. How do you see it? Anyone else have any input on that? Emanations?
I still have the same struggle with it as
Yes.
you do.
It's kind of, I think we'll get it when we get to that level, we'll understand exactly, but it seems very strange, doesn't it? That there could be 1,000 people, emanations of a particular great being, just carrying on with their work, and not robots, not all doing the same things at the same time. They're not, in
Not
that
clones.
sense, exact clones. They're not clones, but in a sense, they all are manifesting very high levels of Buddha activity or Bodhisattva activity, benefiting others in all sorts of ways. But they could have very, very different personalities, is what I understand. There could be someone very peaceful and kind aspect, some more wrathful, some great scholars, some great yogis, some monks and nuns, some not. So there could be all kinds of manifestations. So I'm afraid that's all I can say right now.
If I may just add
Please,
something
please.
to it, Venerable, it's like I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that Khyaltje Lama Zopa Rinpoche had already manifested in a young boy's body, but
Yeah.
he himself hadn't passed away.
That's what they say, yeah, amazing.
It says in his book, Lama
Yes.
Lama.
Yes.
So I'm still kind of figuring it out.
That's very strange, isn't it? Not dead yet, but his reincarnation is born, or the person who then will carry the label is already born before the death of the previous. So yeah, there's some strange things happening which are invisible to my clouded mind, which will become clearer later, one hopes. But right now it's quite difficult to fathom, to put it mildly. So of course a lot of these things require faith. A through and through materialist will just reject this completely, immediately. I'll say this is just. They will say this is why I have a scientific bent of mind. This is why I worship modern science. Or this religions always end up in this kind of hocus pocus, which is not understandable, which doesn't make any sense, which is not realistic, doesn't obey the laws of the universe as science sees it, understands it. So we have to be careful if we consider ourselves some kind of Buddhist, especially if we've taken refuge, then better not to better not to reject these, but to say, okay, I don't understand it right now, and hopefully it will become clearer. But yes, good question, very good question. So his parents had unusual dreams. his father dreamt of a monk who had come to him from the very famous pilgrimage place, Five Peak Mountain in China, Wutaishan, a place associated with Manjushri. And the monk in the father's dream was requiring shelter for 9 months. And so the father in the dream gave him accommodation in their shrine room for that length of time. And the mother dreamt that she and 1,000 women, other women, were in a flower garden to which a boy dressed in white, carrying a vessel, came from the east. Yeah. So in the end, the boy went to each of the women in turn and asked the girl if she would be suitable. And another girl who had come from the east, dressed in red, holding peacock feathers, would say, no, not this one, not this one. But in the end, the boy pointed to who was, Lama Tsongkhapa's mother, and then that girl with the peacock feathers and all said, yes, that's the perfect choice. And then the boy and the girl then purified Lama Tsongkhapa's mother in the dream by bathing her. And when she awoke the next day, she felt very light. So again, one can say, well, this is just make-up. But actually, when our own teacher, Lama Yeshe, was in his mother's womb, the mother had quite very unusual dreams, very unusual dreams that she hadn't had with her other children, the Spanish mother of Lama Ursel. So like that, there were these kind of dreams. More dreams also came, with more monks coming and invoking statues of Avalokiteshvara, and so on. And the father dreaming of Vajrapani, who threw the thunderbolt, the Vajra, which landed on his wife. So things like that. So many auspicious dreams, in other words, occurred, which don't just appear like that for most people. I mean, my mother doesn't say she had any dreams like that before I was born. I think there was more trauma than auspicious dreams when I was in her womb, for one reason or another. So most of us don't have that. Again, he, like Lord Buddha, Lama Tsongkhapa was born without giving suffering to the mother. There was no pain. Auspicious star appeared in the sky, as it is also said to with Jesus Christ, I believe. Some auspicious stars are said to have appeared, and the shepherds followed the star, right? Whether it was a new star or an old star doesn't matter, but these signs were there for the births of these great beings. And then very early on, he took, of course there's a lot more could be said, but he took layman's vows. And who did he take them from? And this I always find very good and very, very pleasing in Lama Tsongkhapa's biography. He, of course, was born. He's the one who started the Gelugpa school. So when he was born, of course, that school wasn't around. There were only the other 3 lineages of Tibetan Buddhism. And he had tremendous contact with everybody. He had lamas from all of the traditions of Tibetan Buddhism, which we have to keep on repeating, especially to nowadays. There are people who can be quite sectarian and one-sided, and especially also from the Gelugpa side. And we need to remember that our own guru, Lama Tsongkhapa, took teachings, had gurus from all of the other traditions of Tibetan Buddhism. And he got his layman's vows at the age of 3 years old from none other than the 4th Karmapa. Okay, so the 4th Karmapa gave Tsongkhapa his, he had the name Kunga Nyingpo at that time. So that was his layman's vows at the age of 3. And other lamas came and so forth. It's said that even, and then before he took his novice vows as a monk, around the age of 7, he already was receiving empowerments, tantric empowerments, since he seemed to have some special abilities. So he's already been given these high teachings. So he was even performing self-initiation meditations upon the very highest tantric deities when he was only 7 years old, which would have meant that he'd also done some retreat on those deities, on those Buddhas, because you can't perform the self-initiation without doing retreats. So already by the age of 7, this child is engaging in very complex retreats that adults find, very, very, very difficult. Then he went to central Tibet at the age of 16 and offered many, many prayers there. And there's so many stories here, and there's constant reference to his aspirational prayers, to his taking many, many different teachers. He had about more than 50 teachers from the different lineages. He also met a great doctor who taught him the major medical treatises, and by the time he was 17, it is said he'd become an excellent doctor, So not just a great tantric master already, but he'd mastered the medical treatises and was renowned as a healer, as a doctor. Thus his fame was already spreading, they say, in his early years, because 17 is still quite early. So he also studied the ornament for the realizations and the various texts by Maitreya Buddha. It said that within 18 days he had memorized and assimilated both the root text and all of its commentaries, and then gained a complete understanding of the perfection of wisdom sutras at great speed with little effort. So his teachers and fellow students were astonished at his knowledge. And after studying the perfection of wisdom, he already at the age of 19 was renowned as a great scholar. Yeah. So this is something unusual. He then received a lot of teachings and was extremely devoted to a teacher called the Venerable Rendawa, who was amazed by the questions that Tsongkhapa would ask. Yeah. Tsongkhapa composed a verse in honor of his teacher Rendawa and would often recite it. Manjushri, Lord of Stainless Omniscience, Avalokiteshvar, Mighty Treasure of Immaculate Love, O Rendawa, Zomu Lodro, Crown Jewel of Tibetan Sages, at your feet I make this request. Grant protection to me, a fly seeking liberation. And then Rendawa replied that this verse was actually more applicable to Tsongkhapa himself, and so adapted the verse. And then this has become, in fact, now regarded as Lama Tsongkhapa's mantra. So the verse that Rendawa, the Guru, then offered to his disciple was Avalokiteshvar, Mighty Treasure of Immaculate Love, Manjushri, Lord of Stainless Knowledge, Vajrapani, Destroyer of all demonic forces, Oje Tsongkhapa, Losang Drakpa, Crown Jewel of the Sages of the Land of Snow, humbly I request your blessings. So here, and this happened several times in his life, he was such a remarkable being that, of course, he needed to take certain teachings from many gurus, but often he would also become the guru in a sense of that teacher. They would share many things. The teacher would give him teachings, Tsongkhapa in turn would give teachings and initiations to his so-called gurus. So there was that give and take because he was so unusual, There's a lot here, but another interesting point is that he had considered going to India at one point. He considered going to India to receive teachings from, because he wanted to get teachings from some of the great teachers who were in India, but because he wanted to meet Nagabodhi, someone called Nagabodhi, and Maitripa. They were both very famous. Maitripa was a great Mahasiddha, and he wanted teachings on middle way philosophy from these teachers. But he checked his dreams, Tsongkhapa checked his dreams, and beheld that he and his disciples dressed in robes were sitting at Vulture's Peak in Rajgir, where the Buddha had taught perfection of wisdom. Then Tsongkhapa discussed his plans with one of his teachers, and the Lama said that he would consult Vajrapani. So this Lama, obviously some high Lama, he consulted Vajrapani, however, in his dreams or in a vision, whatever. And the reply was that if Tsongkhapa went to India, he would develop great renown and probably become the abbot of one of the monasteries. But Vajrapani advised Tsongkhapa to remain in Tibet because it would be of greater benefit both to sentient beings generally as well as to his direct disciples, some of whom had already attained very high levels of the path. Also, the heat in India would prove unbearable for some of the Tibetans. So the present junior tutor of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Kyabje Trijang Dorje Chang, this teaching was given by a Tibetan Lama when this tutor of the Dalai Lama was still alive. He passed away a long time ago. So Kyabje Trijang Rinpoche had said that we have this particular Nyingma Lama, Namka Gyaltsen, to thank for such works as Tsongkhapa's Lamrim and so forth, because Tsongkhapa might otherwise have gone to India and been lost to Tibet. So this Lama advised Tsongkhapa not to go, so Tsongkhapa didn't go to India. Yeah, who knows what would have happened if he'd come here. But it wouldn't have been so beneficial, it is said, for sentient beings.